Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios for today's edition of the Sports Source, East Tennessee's only live 90-minute year-round UT sports show. And boy, have we got stuff to cover today. Thanks to Lori Tucker, Bo Williams, and the WATE6 crew. This was a smooth transition. They were live seconds ago. Did a great job with the Knoxville Marathon. We appreciate you sticking around and watching us as well. But thanks to them for handing it off so neatly and nicely. Let's see if we can carry it because we have a lot of stuff to do today. We've got Vol basketball finishes their year. We'll look ahead to the roster for next year. We'll look back and say, how will this season be remembered? We'll talk about just this past 3-year run, which is the best in school history. We'll talk Lady Vol coaching search, okay, because you've got an opening right now. Where's that going to go? How much did they spend? What if you hire a male coach for Tennessee, which you've never had, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we got football at spring practice. Nobody in town's really talking football as much as we normally do, mainly because you got a coaching search going on with the Lady Vols and an Elite Eight run with the basketball team. Let's dive right into this thing. First segment of our show brought to you by our friends at the Garza Law Firm. And there is nothing more nerve-wracking, more stressful than needing an attorney. It is an automatic, guaranteed stressor for you. So how do you get some peace of mind when you need an attorney? Well, you go out and you find the best attorney possible. And in East Tennessee, that's Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. They have helped so many people. Trust them to help you too. You can trust them to help give you a little peace of mind, to go through whatever storm you're trying to weather. They'll be right there with you step by step. The Garza Law Firm. Check them out at garzalaw.com to learn more. All right, let's welcome in the group today. We have right over here Josh Ward, Vince Ferrara, Will West, all these guys, 99.1 The Sports Animal. And then we have Bob Hodge from Bob Hodge's house. Yeah. Long-time media member, long time. Since day one of the Sports Source, he has been on the panel. Bob, thanks for being here. All right. University of Tennessee's been playing basketball since 1908. But the last 3 seasons have been the best 3-year run in their history. Let's go ahead and put up this graphic if we can. I know we just put up the other graphic. There we go. Take a look at this. Over the last 3 years, here's what you got. 79-28 overall. That's a 73% winning percentage. You're winning 72% of your games in the SEC in the regular season. You've got 1 regular season SEC title, 1 SEC tournament title, 3 NCAA bids, 1 Elite Eight, 1 Sweet 16. Well, technically 2 Sweet 16s because you sailed on right by it into the Elite Eight. 6 wins in 3 tournaments. Guys, that is the best run ever for Tennessee basketball. Here's my question. Does it feel like it? Especially you guys who do radio all week. You deal with the public, so I'm wondering, does it feel like it? Maybe it does. But I just don't know that I've got this feeling of, man, we are rolling right now. We are riding high. Am I wrong about that? Will West, does it feel like the best 3-year run in UT history?
I don't think so, but I think part of that is just where we are societally, right? Like right now, we kind of just like perspective at when we're in the heat of the moment on anything. And then we probably look back too fondly, I would say, when it comes to things that happened 5, 10, 20, 25 years ago. But while you're in the throes of it, I don't think most fans kind of recognize that this is an historic run to be able to appreciate it. And also, you don't have the big championship or the Final Four. There aren't a lot of things that you can point to that say we've never done that before. You don't have any of those, but over a 3-year window, it's been fantastic.
Expectations have been brought up to here, and when your expectations are here, it becomes, we're supposed to do this. This is what we do. So when you had Pearl come in all these years ago, and you went from nothing to, man, we're good, more exciting, more of a surprise. I think now expectation is, we better be in the Sweet 16 this year. And so that's the reason I think it feels a little moody.
Yeah, and it's funny that part of that also is how you look back. People forget that the last 3 years under Bruce Pearl when he didn't have that same kind of team. He had recruited the best athletes, and they couldn't run like they had. It wasn't the turnovers feeding the offense. Like, there were complaints here those last 3 years. But in hindsight, it's like, oh, man, that was 6 years of glory. Every second was spectacular. And I wonder if things go down once Barnes leaves. Are you going to be sitting here going, man, did we have it good under Rick Barnes? Kind of hinting at what you guys are talking about. You may recognize it down the road. Does it feel right now to you guys like it's the best run in UT basketball history?
So I'm going to say yes. It doesn't feel like the most consistently fun and joyous 3-year run from Tennessee's fan base. I think that's 06 through 08, where Bruce Pearl came in and expectations for the program were so low, and then all of a sudden Tennessee exceeded them, and there was the fun of what Bruce Pearl was doing. So I think that was maybe more consistently fun for us to talk about on a daily basis. But if we're talking about the best 3-year run for Tennessee basketball, Tennessee is playing more consistent high-level regular season games, non-conference games that Rick Barnes is able to get Tennessee into, and we're talking about championship opportunities. The tournament championship 2 years ago, first time since '79 when that happened, and then this year winning the regular season, and the expectations of they better get to the Sweet 16. Sometimes when good results can still bring disappointing thoughts at the end, that is a reminder that the program itself is at a really high level.
Yeah, it is clearly the best 3-year run. And I think it depends on who you talk to and how their perspective. The people that we don't hear from on a daily basis are the ones that I think really appreciate Rick Barnes and this run they've recently have. It's
the great silent majority.
Right, yeah. The ones that watch the show. And so it's because there have been some disappointments before that I think skews the view, the big picture view of this stretch. If you have a mechanical issue with your car and then you get it fixed, and then even if it's cruising and it's going well for a while, you still maybe don't feel like you have the best running car because you're still reflecting back on, man, I did have that major issue. So I think that's a little bit, and we'll mention it too, just society right now, instant gratification, and it's in the moment so much. In review, I think it will be looked at.
They just mentioned something though that I think is part of it that we shouldn't dismiss or discount, which is sometimes it's about hype and swag and attitude. Like, people act like right now Tony Vitello is the only baseball coach Tennessee's ever had, right? Rod Delmonico was pretty darn good, right? But we didn't have the same level of personality, attitude, swag, and that has brought people to the building. Bruce Pearl brought people to the building with all of the Attitude Era WWE type stuff. Rick Barnes doesn't do that, and I do think people maybe like that almost as much as they like wins and losses.
Yeah.
And something else, remember last year's team, Josh mentioned it, fun. Remember last year's team was kind of hard to watch because it was, okay, we're going to score 60, we're going to hold you to 56.
Get them in the
and
mud.
we're going to win.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and that wasn't a fun ball game to watch. Now this year, you uncorked it a little bit, you're scoring in the 80s, everything's better. So I think the fun factor may have a little bit to do why this isn't considered such a great run.
It makes you wonder, though, how many. I mean, this place does act like it's North Carolina when it is not. I mean, I grew up, Don DeVoe was really good when I grew up. And for all the people like, well, Ray Mears never won a tournament game. Oh, but only one team got in. I don't care. You had Ernie and Bernie, you got in, you didn't win any. He was a great coach. But Don DeVoe was the level of height that I remembered. That was as high as it got. Then you get Jerry Green, it's like, that isn't good enough. This place thinks its expectations, its view of itself, I don't think is realistic, personally. And I don't think that's fair to any of the coaches they hire in terms of Tennessee basketball. Because under Ray Mears, you weren't consistent 10. You look back and you say, well, we were consistently this and consistently that. You weren't consistent top 10 with Bruce Pearl here. People think you were. You weren't. We went back and showed it last week. You've been 30 more weeks in the top 10 with Rick Barnes. So the idea that you are somehow, we can be snooty, well, you know, we'll cover it here, and it is boring. We talked about it last year, it's painful to watch. But at the same time, if I'm a fan, I'm going, yes, but we win the game. That's where you're supposed to be looking at us saying, hey, morons, we're winning. But we're the ones to say, instead, I think everybody looks at it and says, yes, well, no Final Fours, and I don't really like the style of victory. And it's like, well, do you want to go back to Buzz Peterson? Anybody want to go back to Kevin O'Neill? How about Conzo Martin, which nobody liked here? I just think that we tend
Left
to
out Donnie Tyndall.
Donnie Tyndall, yeah, because people like Donnie Tyndall. They liked him. I think there are. I just think we have a view of ourselves that's a little too high, and we should probably look at this 3-year span while we've got it, and we say, bravo. That's as good as it's ever been. If you think it should be better, fine, you can want that. But in terms of thinking, well, traditionally we've been better than, no, this is your high water mark. So that's the only thing that stands out to me. I don't know that it's necessarily fair to Rick Barnes, and I've been critical of Rick Barnes like everybody else in terms of the style and everything. But I just think it's interesting that we tend to, at times, view this program as something better than it actually is. We view it through a certain lens, whereas everybody else in the country would go, well, do you remember? I'll give you a Bruce Pearl story, then we got to get a break. When he went up there and you played in the preseason NIT, and he was talking about the fact, we're here at the home of the Vols with Allen Houston and Bernard King and Ernie Grant, and the media laughed. The media there at Madison Square laughed because they don't see that. They never put together, oh, yeah, those 3 guys are Tennessee. We look at it and we think Tennessee's here. Everybody nationally looks at it and goes, have they ever been to a Final Four? No. So I think we don't have as good appreciation for this 3 years as we should. Anyway,
I
just
agree.
my take. You agreed?
I agree 100%.
I believe that's changing, though. I do believe nationally Rick Barnes is changing that.
I think your national recognition is higher than it's ever been. Yeah.
I think
But
maybe
it's not.
one more win. If you had got to the Final Four, then maybe that pushes it over.
All right. When we come back, how will Dalton Connect, Santiago Vescovi, and Josiah Jordan-James be remembered? We got Lady Vols, we got football, we got recruiting. Packed show. Stick with us. Come on back. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. If you're thinking about adding onto your home or about turning your garage into an office or a finished room or about redoing a bathroom, then you need to talk with A.G. Hines Company before you start. You'll find they have the best building materials and tools, plus all the tips you could ever possibly need. A.G. Hines Company, local company. You're not dealing with some big monster chain that has to order stuff from, well, we don't have it here, but we can get it in 3 days from Topeka. You don't have to worry about that with A.G. Hines Company. They got it all right in downtown Knoxville, aghines.com. And I want to thank our crew. It's going, okay. I want to thank our crew here, by the way, who are working feverishly behind the scenes to do a transition from another live show to this one. So to all of our crew, including Paul Durrell, thank you very much. Ryan Callahan joins us from GoVols247.com. Ryan, I want to ask you, we'll start with you, and then I'll go over here with the Dalton Connect, and then you can come back with Dalton Connect. But you are in charge of telling me how Josiah Jordan-James and Santiago Vescovi will be remembered. If you had a list of like Tennessee's all-time winningest players, they've both been here 5 years. They were here through the best run ever. They're going to be high on that list, if not the very top of that list. James came in as a 5-star. So he's always dealt with that expectation. Vescovi came in, and his career this last year wasn't his best by any means. So how will these guys, who took you to that list we showed earlier, how will those guys be remembered by Vol fans long term?
I think they'll be remembered as mostly good starters but not great players on some really good teams. I think they'll see them as good but not great players. And that's probably not totally fair to what these guys were at their peaks. Josiah Jordan-James and Vescovi were sometimes their leading scorers. They weren't what they were this year when they had to take more of a backseat to Dalton Connect. So I think they're going to be remembered as more just okay players. As you mentioned, Josiah Jordan-James seen as a disappointment probably compared to what his recruiting ranking was coming out of high school. But these guys played valuable minutes for Tennessee, and they were their go-to scorers for a large stretch of their careers. They just didn't end up that way at the end because they had to take more of a backseat, and they weren't the great shooters, obviously, that Dalton Connect is.
It's clear Barnes loved them.
Yeah.
I mean, Barnes, I don't know that Barnes wouldn't have these guys on his Mount Rushmore, the way he talks about them and the way he's connected with them.
They're glue guys. They're the guys that coaches love to coach, but that fans don't always fully appreciate because the things they do, as you point out with the how the points that opponents scored or didn't score when Vescovi was on the court. Those are the things fans don't always see. It's not always visible, but the numbers add up to make you a better team when those guys are on the court.
Agreements, disagreements, got to be quick.
I'll disagree. I think I think long term he'll be our guy. I think both Josiah Jordan-James and Vescovi. I think short term though, it's going to be like when Eric Ainge and Jonathan Crompton left. oh, thank God they're out of here. Those guys couldn't play. But then 5-7 years later, people get a little bit more
I
perspective.
could go for an Ainger or Crompton right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you get a Justin Worley or a Nathan Peterman, and you're like, man, those were the good old days, right?
I agree with that. I was thinking more long-term view, but immediately, I think the reaction is those guys shouldn't have come back. We're probably better off replacing them next year.
Yeah, boy, disagree with that. I think they'll be remembered kind of like Wayne Chisholm. Wayne Chisholm was a good basketball player on good basketball teams, but nobody ever mentions him on that list of guys that you throw out. So I think eventually they'll get around to being, oh yeah, they were pretty good. But I do think Vescovi's last season not being the scorer he was pushes him down.
Dalton Knecht just had one of the most prolific, explosive seasons for a scorer in Tennessee basketball history. He put himself up there in terms of scorers with the likes of Grunfeld, King, Houston, Tony White, hang the jersey. He put his name amongst the greats, but he was only here 1 year. How will Dalton Knecht be remembered? And the part B to that is, will his NBA career, because he was only here 1 year, will his NBA career impact that?
I think it will. I think it's Alvin Kamara if he has a good NBA career. I think that's what it turns into, because Alvin Kamara wasn't here long, but we still hear about Alvin Kamara far more than we do a lot of other running backs in NFL, in Tennessee lore. So if he's successful in the NBA, I think he can become that. But either way, I think people are going to remember him very, very fondly because he kind of added an extra 20 points per game, or his arrival added 20 points extra per game to what Tennessee was, and it became a better looking product.
And you haven't seen a scorer like that, a guy who could just take over a game. I mean, here's the thing. Tobias Harris is forgotten. I mean, he may come to town and people are nice to him, and people would say good things about him, but I mean, you never hear people say, oh, Tobias Harris, because he was one and done. When's the last time I saw Jaden Springer pop up in a Celtics game the other day? I'm like, oh, yeah, I recognize him. I mean, some of these guys were just in and out. Kennedy Chandler, whoop, gone.
Yep.
It's the problem with the one-and-done guy. Dalton Knecht, because of the scoring, he's above those guys.
He's above those guys, and I think the NBA could even rise him higher. If he goes to the NBA and he is really, really good, then I think his status back at Tennessee, it comes up with that. Yeah. So I think he will be remembered incredibly fondly, and if he's got a really good NBA career, buddy, he is claimed like he came here from high school and stayed for 5 or 6 years.
I got a buddy in Ohio who was a Michigan fan. He was in the wrong state. But he always talked about the fact that Tom Brady, to tie it to what you just said, he was kind of an Eric Ainge up there.
Yeah.
He was just another guy. We had a long list of pretty good quarterbacks. He was one of them. Now he's worshipped at Michigan because of what he did in the NFL. I think Dalton Knecht could do that. Ryan, your take on Knecht?
I completely agree. I think the comparison for him might be in more recent history than that. I think, Alvin Kamara, to me, wasn't even a great player at Tennessee because he was underused. I think the better comparison might be Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker was here 2 years, but I think Tennessee fans remember him very fondly just a couple of years later. We'll see what kind of NFL career he ends up having, but he was a transfer, wasn't quite the same as some of the guys that have been all-time great quarterbacks at Tennessee. But Dalton Knecht, even in 1 year, made such a huge impact, especially if he has an NBA career that's better than most of the Tennessee players who've gone to the NBA in recent years. He's going to be remembered very fondly.
All right, we got to catch a break, but first, I can't waste this. Bob, you can't answer. Dalton Knecht is projected right now to go 4th in one of the mock drafts I saw. That would be the highest Vol NBA draft pick ever, except for one guy who also went number 4. Guesses as to who went number 4 in an NBA draft?
I don't have that. I don't know.
A lot of people would guess King. A lot of people would guess Grunfeld. Some would guess Allen Houston.
Houston would be the one that I would go with.
Tom Boerwinkle, 1968, number 4. I
think you
looked
made that name
up. Look that up. Yeah. All right. We will talk more about the Vols roster next year coming up later in the show. We got football to come up. We got recruiting to come up. But next, let's talk about Kellie Harper being let go at Tennessee. She was an alum. Should that have meant more? Should they have given her 1 more year because of that? We'll get into coaching names and rumors and everything else. Come on back on the Sports Source. Much to cover. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Parkside Cabin Rentals for the best place to stay in the Smokies this spring, this summer, this fall. Hell, this winter. Go ahead, call them. ParksideCabinRentals.com. They do a great job. You can check out the floor plans. You can look at the descriptions and photos of each of the cabins. But boy, they've got it's entertainment. They got the private hot tubs. They've got the pool tables. They've got the big screen TVs. It is nice, I'm telling you. And you always get free parking right in downtown Gatlinburg when you stay with Parkside Cabin Rentals. We appreciate them being a part of this show. All right, let's show you the poll today. I want to get you involved, and here's the deal. I want to see what's changed, and it looks like it's already changing. All right, I want to get your take on this. How much does alumni status mean to you in a coaching search? For years, I have said, stop paying attention to where they went to school. That's how you got Philip Fulmer as your AD. That's how you got Kelly Harper as your coach. Well, they went to UT. Find the best person. Let's see. Has that changed? What does it mean to you? Your options are, it means a lot, maybe a little. Like it could, if two resumes are the same, let's get the VFL in there. Or it means nothing. And if you say it means nothing, then you have changed your mind based on, well, these last couple of years with the two people I just mentioned. So go ahead, click get your smartphone out, click the QR code, and tell us how you feel. I'll be very interested to see if that thing starts moving. All right. There's a reason I'm asking that question. Tennessee Athletic Director Danny White relieved Kelly Harper of her duties this week after 5 seasons. She'd won 67% of her games, never made it past a Sweet 16. When hiring her, Philip Fulmer said it was essential to find someone who played for Pat Summitt and was a Lady Vol. My question, should Danny White, given that she was essential to hire a Lady Vol, should he have given her one more year? This question's about hiring. I'm asking, once you get one in here and you've got an alum in the job and she hasn't done anything horrible, should he have given her one more year just as grace because of the orange? Or was he right to say, I don't care. We're looking at the program. Program's what matters. And I'll start with you, Josh.
Yeah, I would look at the hiring and the job performance evaluation differently. The hiring part, it can help you get somebody that meets what you're looking for, can give you some kind of in. And then does it work out or not? That's a different conversation. That's the conversation now, and I would say you have to move that completely aside. Once you have the coach in place, you are evaluating based on what the expectations for the job are, what the performance is, and what you think is going to happen moving forward. And the expectations for Lady Vols basketball is to go make Final Fours and compete for national titles. And it hasn't happened over the last 5 years, and I don't think Danny White saw that it was going to happen next year, that they were moving in that direction, at least with confidence. So with that being the case, that's what Danny White has to evaluate, not what she did as a player a few decades ago.
So once you get them in here, you don't worry about whether or not they're Vols or Lady Vols. You're just an employee and we're judging you by the numbers, correct?
Correct.
Ryan.
I generally agree. I think obviously the bigger factor to me is where's the program headed as opposed to whether you're an alum or not. So yeah, that falls more into the category of you're just another coach at that point. So I don't think it can matter. And I think to that point, I don't think Danny White went into this season thinking he was going to make a coaching change.
Give her an extension last year.
Yeah, I think the fan base decided in part that they were kind of done with Kelly Harper. I don't think there was much excitement about where the program was headed next year, and there was no reason to think next year was going to be much better, so why not make a change?
And that's another thing that's interesting is fans can always get fired up, and I'll be interested to tell you, it's still leaning way toward it means nothing. But fans usually want an alum, traditionally. Maybe we've learned our lesson here. But traditionally, fans want an alum. But by gosh, as soon as that alum leaves, there was no quarter given to Johnny Majors, Philip Fulmer. People wanted John Chavis immediately. Any of the Randy Sanders didn't get any extra love. Chuck Smith came in. Terry Fair. We can up and down the line. It's like, oh, they didn't perform. Fire his ass. That's the way it goes. Will.
Yeah, look, I don't think it matters at all. I don't think she should have been given more time. She was unqualified when she got the job, and I think most people wanted it to work out because she's a really likable person. But she never had the resume to have this job. So why in the world are you going to hang on? Once you know you're going the wrong way down the interstate, don't wait 2 or 3 more exits. Turn around the interstate as quickly as you possibly can. You have one top 100 player signed the last 2 classes. And there's an issue with NIL, or there has been a little bit of an issue with NIL with some of the Lady Vol booster situation where they didn't want to give the money to high school kids. They wanted to do transfer portal. That's supposedly changing, which I think is going to help a lot, give it a better infrastructure. But Kelly should have never had the job. And she got fired at NC State. So why in the world would you hang on to her just because she was a really great player here?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I mean, my take is I wouldn't have hired somebody just because of their alumni status to begin with. But once you're in here, you got to look at the program. I think it's a positive that you're looking at what Danny White did and you're saying to yourself, okay, he's going to be too early instead of too late, which I think in a lot of cases, it's not always the right case, but in a lot of times your heart can get you in trouble making those types of decisions.
It makes him more uncomfortable.
Yeah, it seems like he's making a decision with the head rather than with his heart.
Yeah, Kelly accomplished a lot as a player. She's a solid coach. She cared greatly about the University of Tennessee beyond Lady Vol basketball. But when Sandy White made the decision he had to make that move.
Well, and I would say it's merit-based, right? She didn't have the merits she didn't get the job done
Right.
at the end of the day. That's where it is. And it also tells me Danny White's not willing to let this Lady Vol program become Louisiana Tech basketball, become Texas basketball, which were great when I was a kid.
Old
Nobody
Dominion.
cares now. Yes, Old Dominion.
That's where I was going to go with give him credit for making the bold move and deciding, you know what, there's probably money to be made here and getting some fans back on board, and B, we need to fix this.
Or at least money
Especially
not
right
to be
now.
lost.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
especially right now, though. We've never seen
TV
eyeballs
ratings.
on women's basketball like this before.
Well, we'll get into how much Danny White should be spending and should he make a run at a big name the way that LSU went and grabbed Kim Mulkey. It certainly worked for them. Should Tennessee be going down the same path? We'll tell you what we're hearing about where they are going. When we come back, though, let's talk about football. And that is, what's the buzz coming out of spring practice? What are the top topics? Because we're talking about Elite Eight. We're talking about coaching hires. There's not been a lot of buzz about spring practice. Let's start some next. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Spring is here, folks, which means it's time to protect your home from termites and carpenter bees. Both are wood-destroying, home-destroying varmints. And Southeast Termite and Pest Control can get rid of them for you. Since 1971, they've been handling termites and carpenter bees and getting rid of them. Call them this week, southeasttermite.com. These are really good folks, really, really good folks. Love having them on this show, love dealing with them. You will too. Southeast Termite and Pest Control. All right, back with Josh, Ryan, and Vince. We were just talking, fourth segment of our show, the week before the orange and white game, and we're finally getting to football. There's been other stuff going on, no question. Elite Eight run with basketball. Now you've got the coaching search with the Lady Vols and how much they're going to spend and who they're going to go after, et cetera, et cetera. But football just seems to be less buzz anyway this year. I don't know how much of it is there's other stuff and how much of it is it just kind of feels got a business as usual kind of mode going on over there. Vince, let me ask you, are you surprised there's not been as much buzz, or is it just we're looking at other places right now?
I do think that there's been other things to sort of short term take your mind off of it. I also think there's kind of an assumption that Nico's going to be really good, so we don't need all these practice reports.
He's fine, we know it.
And documentation that Nico is good, because we already know he's leading us to the college football playoff and that kind of stuff.
Well, you've been over there some. What buzz are you getting? What do you think's buzzworthy to talk about right now?
Well, if there's not hype about Nico and people talking about it, let me start it, because
There you go.
I think he has looked tremendous. His ability to be businesslike and communicate with his teammates is so different than Joe Milton, and the accuracy is there, just the poise, and also it's kind of like with Josh Dobbs. You're not going to see his best work until game day. So he could just throw balls on air and throw to his receivers. That's one thing, but I think his playmaking ability is going to show out even more on the game. So maybe the practices don't reflect the impact that he can have.
Meaning, not to put words in your mouth, but I'm guessing you mean when the play breaks down.
His
He
capability.
can make things happen when it doesn't go right, which you're not going to see that in practice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Throw on the run, those kind of things. And also, I think the defensive line group, this is probably the least, and Ryan, you can probably test this, the least that I've heard Rodney Garner getting on his D lineman in any season he's been here.
Yeah.
And it's not because he's soft or anything, because he mentioned it. He's like, he preferenced a compliment about his guys. He's like, I really like my, doesn't mean I'm soft, but I really like my group. I think that's a real positive, too.
Gentlemen, buzz?
Yeah. I think those are definitely the two position groups I would start with. Quarterback, definitely with Nico, a lot of excitement about him and the way he's looked, and the leader he's already emerging as. I think that was something he kind of took a backseat to Joe Milton last year. Now he's kind of easing into that leadership role as a sophomore or a redshirt freshman. That's pretty impressive. The other thing to me, I think there is some buzz about Tennessee's new additions at wide receiver. I think Chris Brazzell, Mike Matthews, those guys have made plays, showed up in both scrimmages. So I think that's a good sign and something people are talking about internally that, hey, this offense had the chance to be a lot better because we're better and deeper at receiver.
My only concern with the Mike Matthews thing is Josh Heupel seems to not want to go with freshmen a lot. Do you think Mike Matthews is good enough that he could make Heupel rethink that? Or the rest of the core is lesser than which will make him rethink it.
I think there's enough good players around him that I don't think he's a starter to open the season for sure. I think he'll play though. I think he'll play probably from the start. So I think he's a guy that maybe pushes that boundary a little bit, and we'll see how much he's willing to allow a guy like Mike Matthews onto the field. But yeah, it's a question. We still got to kind of see how much are they willing to ease in a true freshman, because we've not seen a lot of that. To your point,
Josh, one thing you could say that this is just caution. This is just precautionary stuff. They do this every year. Seems like there are a lot of guys, when you read who took part in this scrimmage and who took part in that scrimmage, he didn't. You got a lot of backups on your line. Your running back, you're wondering if you need another back now with Cam Seldon banged up. My concern, and I've got to go with a negative, of course. You can tell me if I'm wrong. I'm a little worried about some of the guys that are out. I mean, it is spring practice. I'd like to see some of these guys getting more reps together, especially on the offensive line.
Yeah, well, some of the buzz out of spring often can be, okay, what are the remaining questions about a team? And I think the depth of the offensive line, which is being tested during spring, and they're getting extra reps for young guys because those veteran guys like Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins are being held out. John Campbell Jr., I think, on Thursday on the right side of the line. But that's also unseen. So I think that affects some of the buzz. Is, okay, you're hearing questions about what can the young offensive linemen do, but they're not really being seen in those reps that they're getting. Running back is another one. Cam Seldon, there's a ton of excitement when he got some more playing time in the Citrus Bowl, his talent. And then, wait a minute, he might not be ready for the start of the season because of the shoulder injury. That's a real question. So I think Nico, there's just a ton of confidence like Vince was talking about. That's for sure. Not seeing everything has probably affected some of the conversation. That's why I think it'll change a little bit this week with fans not necessarily being able to pack Neyland Stadium because of the limited capacity, but they'll be able to see the team on a screen. I think that will change the conversation this week as we move past the basketball conversation and back into football more full-time.
Where it should be. All right. When we come back, what are the three biggest Vol recruiting stories going on right now that Ryan Callahan is covering? We'll ask Ryan next. We're running recruiting. Then we got Lady Vol's coaching candidates. Then we got more the men's basketball roster. More football. Come on back. And welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by our friends at Madisonville Marine. Madmarine.com is the website. And they got all kinds of boats. Hurricane deck boats, aqua patio pontoons, suncatcher pontoons, skeeter bass boats. G3, they've got all kinds of different versions of the G3, from John boats to the outdoor boat. They got all kinds of stuff. Crevalle, you name it, they got it at Madisonville Marine. There's a reason that people drive all the way from Georgia. People drive all the way from North Carolina. People drive from West Tennessee. People order, here's what kind of deals they have. People nationally go to madmarine.com, order boats from Madisonville, and have them shipped to Florida and California. Now think about that. Why would you do that? How many boat dealers do you think there are in Florida and California? 1 million? But they're buying from Madisonville Marine and shipping them. That's the kind of deal you get at Madisonville Marine, Highway 411 North in Madisonville. There's no better place to buy a boat. Okay, let's remind you of the poll. Let's show the poll. Well, hey, a little something from our race coverage that happened before. There's the poll, and it looks like the majority of you are saying that alumni status and a coaching search does not matter to you anymore. Very few people say it means a lot. All right, very good. Keep clicking if you would, and you can go to sportsource.tv/poll to play along there too. All right, back with Ryan Callahan. You cover recruiting for GoVols247.com. To give this one a little bit more weight this week, instead of me asking you specific questions, I wanted to just say, all right, what are your top 3 biggest recruiting stories you're covering regarding the Vols right now? So, most number 1 biggest, coolest story. What do you got? What's number 1?
Well, it's a very big picture thing, but I think it's worth mentioning because it's maybe even a little different from past years. Just the visitors Tennessee is hosting throughout spring practice. There is a ton of quality players coming through Knoxville throughout the past few weeks. Just this week alone, on Monday, a 5-star wide receiver for the scrimmage Thursday night. Another of their top wide receiver targets in from California. Yesterday for the practice, a handful of their top offensive line targets, including the number 2 player in the country, David Sanders from Charlotte, a few other top receiver targets. It's been a really impressive list of guys coming in throughout the past 3 weeks. So Tennessee's in a lot of battles, and I would just say, generally speaking, has as healthy of a recruiting board as I've probably seen in several years, because they've got so many guys that they're in play with that just about every position on the board, and a lot of them have made it to Tennessee already or are coming in next weekend for the spring game.
That's a good sign. We talked a couple of years ago after they went 11-2, and we're like, well, we're not seeing a big bump. Maybe it took a little a little time.
And it's year 4 for a staff. I think that always shows up that you've had more time. They've been
Build
recruiting this.
relationships
They've been,
with
been
coaches.
recruiting this class for a long time already, so that's showing up, and they're certainly getting a lot of these guys on campus now.
What's the second biggest story you're covering?
Well, it's sort of a branch off of those two. I think because they're important positions with the big-time quarterback already committed in George McIntyre. Who can he bring in around him? I think a lot of that goes to offense. There's a lot of emphasis on offensive tackle. So I think offensive tackle, who they end up with there is kind of one of the big storylines for this class. I mentioned David Sanders, Juan Gaston out of Georgia, battling Georgia, some other big programs for him. They're in a lot of heavyweight fights. Josh Petty, a guy that grew up liking Tennessee out of the Atlanta area, battling Clemson, Georgia, other teams like that for him. So they're in a lot of big-time battles, but who are they going to get? You know, J. Allen Matthews out of New Jersey is one of the guys I think they're in the best shape with right now, but they've got a pretty healthy board there. But again, out of 7 or 8 guys that they really like, who do they end up with to give Nico Iamaleava and George McIntyre some real protection there on the offensive line and continue building up some depth there where they obviously have shown this spring they don't have enough ideally at that position?
Last one. What's the third story?
Similar storyline at wide receiver. It's a big class, I think, at wide receiver because they've come up short numbers-wise the last 2 years. They're in it with a lot of guys, including a couple 5-stars who've been on campus this spring. Jamie French, Caleb Cunningham, some of the guys that visited this week were Darius Jackson out of Memphis, a big-time target in state, Travis Smith Jr. out of Atlanta. So a lot of guys that they're in the picture with, but how many can they close on? George McIntyre wants to have coattails, bring some good players with him, but in the NIL era, how much does it matter to get the team up with a guy like that? Is that the deciding factor? Does it help Tennessee? They had a little bit of trouble with Nico a couple years ago getting guys to follow him. I think they have a sense there's going to be a little more success this year, but who do they end up with out of that group? And can they get the 4 good receivers in this class they really need to kind of replenish the depth at that position?
Excellent. Ryan Callahan, folks can follow you and follow all those stories and many more that you're covering at GoVols Extra.
GoVols 24/7.
GoVols 24/7.com. Sorry.
That's all right.
When you give out this many plugs, it's hard to keep them all straight. All right. When we come back, what do we feel best about? Usually we ask, what are the number one concerns right now? Let's be positive. What do we feel best about with the UT football program right now? We'll talk about that when we come back. Welcome back. This segment of the Sports Source brought to you by DanielHoodRoofing.com. I mentioned earlier that spring is here, and sure enough, we had our first big storms of the season this past week. If your neighborhood gets hit with high winds, hail, heavy rain, get a free roof inspection from Daniel Hood Roofing. They want to get you a new roof, and they want your insurance company to pay for it. DanielHoodRoofing.com. The storms are coming. We know that. It's East Tennessee. It's spring. When they come for your house, be sure to have Daniel Hood Roofing come and inspect your roof for free. All right, back with Bob, Vince, Will, Josh. As I said in the last tease, usually we discuss, okay, what are our top concerns going into spring? What are our big worries? We're going to be positive vibes here right now. I want to know what you feel good about. And I know of no one more positive than Bob Hodge to start with. Positive Bob? What are you going with, Positive Bob?
I will go with something that I accused other people of last year. Joe Milton, MVP of the Orange Bowl. Everybody said, man, he's going to win the Heisman first-round draft pick. This is going to be great.
Well, he could throw it 150 yards.
I thought it was 290. But anyway, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say what I'm positive about this year is next year Tennessee's offense will run more smoothly, less clunk. You ever been to the grocery store and you get the buggy and it's got the bad wheel, and as you're pushing it every few minutes, I think that's what Tennessee's offense looked like last year. I just think that this year, and the people saying positive things about what Nico's been doing, I think it will go out and it will look more like the Hendon Hooker offense did.
More like the Hendon Hooker and less like the Hindenburg.
Yeah.
The grocery cart is an excellent analogy. Got to remember that. Vince, what do you feel positive about right now? What do you have great confidence in?
That Tennessee has 3 things that are essential to winning in college football: coaching, quarterback, defensive line. If you have a shot to win, you need those 3 things, and I think Tennessee's in a good position in all of them. Excellent coaching staff, like the 2 new hires, and then obviously a quarterback with Nico. The way he communicates, the way he's not a hype guy, he's just working and focused on football. And then the defensive line group is deep and experienced, and I think that's a real nice foundation. Obviously, other questions to build around, but I like those 3 to start.
Tempo's the thing. Like this entire offense is predicated on tempo because otherwise you're just running what Bryles did slower than the way Bryles ran it. Yeah. But look, there was one specific press conference where Josh Heupel said the reason why we're slowing things down is because the offensive line. We need everything right administratively. I think we've all found out it was Joe Milton that he was more comfortable slowing the thing down.
And he said that at his pro day.
He did.
He said, I like it slower.
Did. But look, I don't think Nico has to have better stats than Joe Milton this past year for Tennessee to have a better year because I think it'll open up the running game and do so many other things for Tennessee's offense because everything Josh Heupel does is predicated on the tempo.
What are you confident in?
So I think one of the fixes to the buggy will be Nico and then the receivers. I can't sit here with any level of confidence and say there's a Jalen Hyatt 15 touchdown Biletnikoff season, but last year the wide receivers had a much bigger drop off than the coaches or I think anybody on the outside predicted. Dante Thornton came in and was kind of given playing time at a spot where he wasn't really comfortable yet. I think he's more comfortable. I think competition is more real because of Chris Brazzell and the freshmen that have come in, Brew McCoy coming back. Again, there has to be an assumption of health once he's back out there in August. But I think the receivers will be much better than a year ago. And if the quarterback is more in tune with what the coaching staff are asking him to do within the offense, that'll help the passing game a lot.
I'm confident that you're going to have one of the most hyped players in college football this year, and it's not Nico. In case you didn't see it, James Pierce a few weeks ago, Pro Football Focus ranked James Pierce as the best edge rusher in the country this year. This past week, they ranked him as the #1 returning defensive player, period, in America. The #1 defensive player in America, returning. That's a whole lot of hype, a whole lot of focus on James Pierce. He looked great last year. I have confidence that everybody's going to be talking about him this year. Now, I know that's not, I'm cheating a little because I wanted to get that stat in there, that story in there. But I think that most people would be looking at it thinking that Nico is going to be the star of this team. I think the star of this team is going to be James Pierce. And the good news is, if you can find just one other guy to mix and match with him, boy, that guy, because there's going to be so much focus from the opposing team on James Pierce, somebody's going to be benefiting from that if you can find that other pass rusher. But I do think the defensive line looks great. All right. When we come back, who are the candidates to replace Kelly Harper? How much should UT be spending? Does age matter? Does gender matter? What are we hearing? What are the rumors? We'll try and cover all that next. Coming back on the Sports Source. We're running through the questions right now that we're not going to ask on air. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems. SafetySystems.com is where you go if you need a security system, if you need home automation. Man, they tear it up with home automation in a good way. You can run your whole house from your smartphone or your tablet. They do great work. I've used them for years. You'll see their sign in front of my home. You'll see it in front of homes all over East Tennessee. Go to their website and learn more about all the stuff that VFL J.J. Surlis and his team at Safety Systems can do for your home or your business. All right. I want to talk about the Lady Vols coaching search. Well, first of all, let's go ahead and take a look at the poll results. This is a big change. If I'd asked this pre-Philip Fulmer's AD run, this would have been flipped. It means a lot. 4% of you said that. 28% said, maybe a little. Might be the difference, between this guy and this guy. Okay, we'll do that. It means nothing. 68%. Bravo. Good for you. That's exactly what it should mean. Nothing. Yeah. And I would actually go so far as to say, don't hire them because it always ends badly when you hire a coach. They're hired to be fired, and you're just destroying a relationship with somebody. Unless the absolute knockdown, drag-out best coach in the country is a former Vol, I would run the other way. But that's just me. Although it looks like you're coming along. Good. All right. I want to knock out the Lady Vol stuff. Let me ask you a couple of questions. First of all, should age matter in this at all? Because
yeah, it should. It should because there is, you are hiring for it. This is a rebuild job, and like Westmore, I think Westmore's great. Westmore's like 60.
Rumors that they had talked to Westmore at North Carolina State. He's spent a long time in East Tennessee. He's a Tennessee native.
There also is there is no coach who coaches at a high level after the age of 74. Well, I can't find anyone who's done that in the last 30 years. So that's why I say that.
Tennessee hired Rick Barnes at 60.
Yeah.
He's had a pretty good run between 60 and 70.
60 is very different than 67, right?
Yeah.
I think those are very different things.
What is our age?
Depends on if you're 63.
Yeah.
I don't know Vic Schaefer's age when he was at Mississippi State, but he had success in elevating that program.
Yeah, so. Rick Barnes has taught me, I don't know, just get the right guy or girl. Doesn't matter to me. The age thing, I get it. You're trying to recruit to younger players. Rick Barnes doesn't seem to have a problem with that.
No.
So I would probably go the opposite of you, but I see where you're going. What is your age limit? Where's your
I would say,
Mr. Ages?
if I have to rebuild, I would say somewhere around 66. If I don't have to rebuild, I would probably, it would be fine up to 68, 69, but you understand
that's
3 or
pretty
4
high up there anyway.
3 or
Okay.
4 years is all you get from that.
Okay, but you would go over 60.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Then that's fine. Next one, should gender matter? Lady Vol fans, you're used to seeing a woman coach the Lady Vols. Do you think, I'm not saying should it, I'm saying do you think there would be any Lady Vol fans who would have a problem?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, I think so. Because, I mean, you're talking about, even though you're 2 generations of coaches removed now, replacing the woman who literally laid the foundation for this sport. So I think here, yeah, I think it would matter to a lot of their fans.
To some, I think others want to win. And I think once you get a taste of the winning, I think you kind of push that to
No,
the
I
back
agree
burner.
with that too.
Yeah.
You're not
I think
saying
if you come
should,
in
you're
and
just
win.
saying-
Right.
I'm not saying should, but I think there is a segment of the fan base that, yeah, you know, Pat Summitt built it, by golly, we'd like to have another woman in here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a disrespect towards Pat Summitt or promoting women's basketball, women's sports to hire a male coach.
I think the majority don't care anymore, though, because you've had 2 former Lady Vols who were tied to Pat Summitt, who were female. I think at this, like, again, when
Is it to the point where it's just win? we
Yeah,
don't care?
now it's just win and we don't care. I do think there will be a vocal minority that says things, but I think it's a vast minority.
Yeah, the split on that is different now than it would have been 10 years ago, or was 10 years ago.
right.
They're 16 years removed from a Final Four. Fans
Yeah.
want to go back to a Final Four.
Let me throw it. Just I wasn't planning on this one, but just to see what you think the Lady Vol fans would react. There's one of Gino's former players who's coaching right now, Carla Berube. I think she's at Brown or Columbia or something. You think Lady Vols fans could put up with
Yeah,
a UConn
absolutely,
grad?
absolutely.
See, I think that would go down easier
Okay.
than a male coach would.
That'd be a good split
I
because
don't know,
there's the Dave Hart, Jeremy Pruitt, and that's knowing the results after. But even at the time, I think there was some
That's
Alabama.
right. He was a virus sent here intentionally. Remember those people?
Princeton, she's at Princeton.
Princeton. Okay, sorry. I knew it was somewhere in the,
Oh, well,
the
that
Ivy
changes
League.
mine.
She's actually decently high up on the odds, the Vegas
Okay.
odds for Lady Vols next
Well,
year.
there you go. All right. Let me throw out a couple of names here, just for kicks. All right. Now, Tennessee could make, LSU went out and made the splash hire. They went and grabbed Kim Mulkey. She'd won national championships. She'd been to Final Fours. Jeff Walsh was a name at Louisville. He has a lot of success. There's something about Jeff Walsh that keeps him at Louisville, though, because a lot of people think he would have come to Tennessee last time. His name doesn't get mentioned much. Don't know what it is. Not going to speculate, but I'm just guessing there is something that keeps him off the list until they hire him. And then I'll say, wow, what a great hire. Brenda Freeze at Maryland. If you wanted to make a Mulkey hire, she's been at Maryland for a long time. She's still only mid-50s, though. She's been coaching since she was very young. She got a national championship, 3 Final Fours. Mm-hmm. Now, that would be another name. Another name down there at the bottom would be young coach, really good. She's turned around USC quickly. She was at California before that, Lindsey Gottlieb. She fires up a lot of threes. She also has the #1 recruiting class in the country. So if you get her, you can bring all those people through the transfer portal. You can do the Ed Orgeron and bring them with you. But the reason I mentioned she shoots a lot of threes, let me give you another couple of Moneyball candidates here. And I say Moneyball, for those of you who never saw the movie or read the book, that's the way the Oakland A's, they knew they couldn't compete with the New York Yankees and the other big spenders by just going out and outspending. They didn't have the cash. So they had to find another way, and they did it through numbers and analytics. We pointed out long ago, Danny White brings in Josh Heupel at UCF and then here. That's a guy who didn't have to he didn't have to sit here. And when they fired Jeremy Pruitt, I said, please, don't we put a big graphic up that said, don't go after someone who's going to tell you, well, we'll out-recruit Alabama. No one's going to last long enough to out-recruit Alabama. So he went and he found somebody who had a system. He could game the system. I can beat you even if I don't have the best players. Nate Oates, he hired him at Buffalo. Same thing. Guy shoots a ton of threes. Lance Leipold, he hired him at Buffalo. Somebody else shoots threes. Terry Morin at Indiana. She's a lifer Indiana, but it's another I'm throwing out there. She's won Big Ten titles. She's in the Sweet 16 every year. She's someone who shoots a ton of threes. And Kim Caldwell at Marshall. Her name is getting kicked around right now. She was at Glenville State for 7 years. She's been at Marshall for 1 year, led the nation in three-point attempts per game this year. She's won like 90% of her games. She's never coached. COVID was the only year she didn't win the conference she was coaching in. She's young. She doesn't have the proven name. But do you think he goes with the splashy hire, or do you think he goes with the Moneyball hire?
I think he starts with trying to get the splashy hire. I
Ball.
don't know that he will, and then he'll go with the Moneyball hire after that. That's where I think it lands, because I don't think Lindsey Gottlieb's coming. That would be who I would target. I think that was a really well-coached USC team this year. I don't know that Freeze is leaving Maryland.
But who would have thought Kim Mulkey would leave Baylor?
You wouldn't have. So you try, right? You make them say no. Becky Hammond. I would make Becky Hammond. I would pile up dough in front of her until she tells me no, but she's going to. And then you probably land on a Moneyball hire.
Same thought. Go for the big name, proven coach that's if either coached at a big program like Freeze or Gottlieb at USC. She's done too good of a job in recruiting. She has all these players that probably aren't going to come with her, or Hammond, who's maybe a future NBA coach. But if not, then go for the Moneyball coach.
Yeah, and she coached one of the better players after Caitlin Clark and Gigi Watkins as well. And who knows, maybe she was to come as well. But I agree. I think you swing big. There's been a lot of talk about Dawn Staley. I don't see that happening either. I mean, wow.
Across the but that's the kind of thing. All right, you want to make a splash. If you're Tennessee, you should be able to go. I mean, Rick Barnes almost left Tennessee for UCLA. Now, he grew up loving John Wooden, but UCLA has that name. When it comes to women's basketball, Tennessee should have that name. You've got a chip that you can sell if you want to sell it to that kind of thing.
Well, John Wilkerson and I had Jimmy Dykes from ESPN on, who's a former women's basketball coach, and he said that the Tennessee job is the best in the country, the Lady Vols job. So he still believes that there is a lot of cred in the coaching ranks for that Tennessee job.
But is the popularity of the sport right now taking away from that a little bit because you're not being talked about during the highest rated basketball game on ESPN the other night?
All those brands. And
That's adding to the motivation
so
of finding the right coach,
think it
because
is.
Tennessee is watching this attention thinking we should be in this.
Yes,
top.
But who are
Exactly.
the top women's basketball analyst names right now in America? Candace Parker, Andrea Carter, right? So when you have those two, I do think your name's still out there a little bit.
If Danny White were at Tennessee and he hired Josh Heupel, not from UCF Josh Heupel, but offensive coordinator, never coached before. If he hired Nate Oates, if he hired Lance Leipold, big school like Tennessee says, that's not a good enough resume. I will tell you this, when I look at Josh Heupel, Lance Leipold, and Nate Oates, if Danny White comes back with Kim Caldwell, and I say 7 years at Glenville State, 1 year at Marshall, he's got the benefit of the doubt. I'm giving it to him.
Yeah,
Because
I
I
agree.
think he has shown he can spot it. I will also think one thing that we haven't talked about, he's got a brother who's a coach. He's got a father who was an AD for a long time. He's got tentacles all over the place. I think he's probably got a lot of good contacts out there.
Yeah.
Danny White has a terrific track record of hiring coaches.
I don't remember him missing. That's the thing. From Buffalo to UCF to here,
Yeah.
I don't remember him missing. I do, but again, I
In
think
the
those
big sports, yeah.
But yes, it doesn't mean you'll get your number one option then, because they tried to hire James Franklin before they landed on Josh Heupel, right? But
And Tony Elliott.
yeah,
even
but
though they said they never
wherever
offered.
he lands, I'm going to at least give him. I agree with you. I give him the benefit
I
of the
give
doubt.
yeah, even for somebody, I know that's going to be the thing. She's mid-30s. She's okay. This guy has spotted a lot of people that I wouldn't have spotted before, and if he's going to pick them out, Nate Oates, if you'd hired him in Alabama straight, right out of wherever he was before they got him at Buffalo, I think it would have worked. So I'm not going to worry that they're getting somebody from Glenville State. I'm going to give Danny White the benefit of the doubt. All right, when we come back, let's talk about Tennessee's men's basketball roster for next year. One guy transferring out, three other people leaving. Who could be transferring in? Let's talk about next year's men's team. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. Pool tables, card tables, shuffleboard tables, ping pong tables. Basically any kind of table you could want, they've got it at Games and Things. And fun. They just got so much fun there. Everything, bars, bar stools, home theater seats, jukeboxes, arcade games. Man, Games and Things. Because life should be fun, and they make it fun. And I say this every week. I'm telling you, get down to their showroom. If you've never been in there, it is a fun place to walk into. OurGameRoom.com if you can't make it. But head to their showroom, corner of Kingston Pike and Level Road. All right, we got to catch up a little bit right here. I want to show you the roster for next year. Here's what the roster looks like for Tennessee. That's alphabetical order with guards on top. Then your forwards on top, then your guards at the bottom, although basically it's positionless basketball these days. Gone, Freddie DeLeon. Transferred out this week. Never really could crack the lineup and get regular playing time, though he did get in a NCAA tournament game, but he didn't crack the lineup very often this year. And, of course, Connect, Vescovy, Josiah Jordan-James, they're gone. But when you look at that roster, how do you feel about it for next year? You're adding Bishop Boswell there from Charlotte Myers Park. He's coming in. He was a four-star recruit. And, of course, DJ Jefferson, redshirt sophomore, he was a four-star coming out of high school. Cade Phillips was a three-star. He'll be a redshirt freshman next year. Thoughts on what you got coming back, Vince?
Well, I think you have to get development from what's coming back. If everyone was to stay the same, it's not good enough to do anything close to what they did this year. Obviously, the portal is you're going to add some talent. I think the two biggest needs in the portal is you need another guard, someone that it can play all three positions. And then another thing is I think they need a big physical scoring post. They had an offensive post, they had a defensive post, and they had a young post. And so they need someone that can play both ways for them and be a second scoring threat. Hey, Estrella has some offensive ability, and he played physical, and I think
he did not back down from Edie either.
He can develop, but for next year in the short term, you need more than just one guy. And who knows if Adu will get to his defense to the level you need. So I think a two-way post, physical, big, bouncy, that's what would be a top priority.
There are some guys like there's one kid out of Rutgers who is high on most of these transfer lists, and that's the thing. You never know if they transferred somewhere this morning, have they announced. But there's a kid out of Rutgers who's a big man. There's one other guy. I think FAU has a big guy as well. In terms of guards, everybody in the country is after John L. Davis, the guard who was the leading scorer at FAU. He's in the portal. If you could grab him, that'd be great, but everybody in the country is going to be after him.
Right.
Can you go to him and say, Dalton Connect, look what we did with Connect. Another guy that's out there, A.J. Storr, small forward out of Wisconsin, he's way high on everybody's list. Thoughts on what they need for next year?
Yeah, I completely agree. You've obviously got to do your best to try to replace Dalton Connect with a similar level scorer. You're probably not going to find someone quite at that level, but you've got to do your best to get someone else like that. I'm all for if they could find the right post player. I think that could improve this team a lot. I'm not sure you're going to find that easily, though. So I would lean toward maybe bringing in another wing. You've got to replace Josiah Jordan-James and Vescovy in addition to Connect. So I think you need a couple perimeter scorers that make this a more offensive-oriented team. The guys they have coming back, some good players, but a lot of guys like Meshack that are not going to be big scorers.
You're counting on what's Carr turn into? What does he develop? And then
Kylie's done.
Yeah, and how many of these guys? I mean, DJ Jefferson. We didn't see him. Yeah. Is he going to develop? What's Bishop Boswell going to be as a freshman? We also spent all year talking about, well, you need more drivers, more guys that can go in and create. Okay, so basically we need a post guy, a guard, and then somebody that can drive. Could be the guard, but somebody that can drive. Okay, well, that's what everybody in the country is looking for. So you're looking for everything.
This is my day of positivity. Because
Positive Bob.
I am going to trust Rick Barnes.
It's the eclipse, isn't it? It's like once every 17 years.
Or actually the crack in the dome that they're going to be repairing tomorrow. That's the theory.
Oh, okay.
Their dome is cracked. But anyway, I trust Rick Barnes to take what he has, and he'll add some guys. He'll add guys that help. I'm sure he will in the portal. But just based on his track record, okay, you've got Carr. Remember, John, I texted you during the Cream game.
I've got Carr. I drive.
He scored, and I texted John, Cameron Carr, forgot he was on the team. I think he will take what he's got, and these guys that haven't played a lot, though, they've been developing. Everybody talks about his hard practices. Does it wear them out? Well, maybe it does a little bit, but it also makes these guys who haven't been playing a lot better. So I'm just trusting in that Rick Barnes will take what he has, add a couple of pieces, and I'm going to say, and they'll probably be pretty fine.
I think you'll probably be pretty good next year. I don't think Elite Eight for next year, though. I don't think you're.
No,
and part of that's luck, but you went into this year with people talking Final Four. I don't think you're going to be saying that come October. That said, I think you should be pretty good this year. I think you should once again be able to compete for being near the top of the league. I just think that's where the program is now.
I think one of the big questions was the post scoring last year, and Jonas Adu developed and gave them that. So developing the guys here, that's another big part of it.
He may be the most important guy this year. You want to talk about needing an offensive can he develop his game? Yeah. Because we showed the stats when he scored at least 10 points, they were 20-2 at one point.
Right.
When he scored 14, they were 13-0. He completely cratered against Purdue and Edie. And he cratered against Creighton as well.
Yep.
He did not look good at the end of the. If you can build his confidence up, get him any kind of offensive game. That's the guy that you really need to develop this offseason, in my opinion.
Owake's offense, Estrella's overall game. Then you have some post depth. Then if you get into foul trouble, you can hang.
All right, very good. When we come back, we told you what we feel good about when it comes to Tennessee. What about other programs around the SEC? I see a lot of schools that are listed. They're supposed to have more wins than Tennessee on the over-under line. How many of those do we truly feel confident in that they will be better than Tennessee? These schools, I'm confident will be better. I think the list will shock you. Come on back. Welcome back. This segment of the Sports Source brought to you by Pipe Wrench. Through the end of April, man, get this, I had to read it twice. Through the end of April, they are offering a free water heater with the purchase and installation of a new HVAC system. You get a new HVAC system from Pipe Wrench, let them install it. They will throw in a free water heater. That is a pretty good deal. PipeWrench.com to learn more. Call the local Pipe Wrench this week to ask them about it. Drain cleaning, plumbing, heating, cooling. I've used these folks for the plumbing. People use them for all those different things. They are a tremendous company. They get great reviews. And right now, if you get a new HVAC system through Pipe Wrench and let them install it, you're going to get a free water heater thrown in. I could not believe that when I saw it, but that is the deal through April only. Check it out this week, PipeWrench.com. All right, back with the whole crew. All the way around to Will West, who's standing at a wipey board. Let's cut to the Will shot. All right, I've got all the teams that were supposed to have more wins or as many wins, 7.5 is the over-under from FanDuel, as Tennessee on that list. We talked about why we felt good about Tennessee. I want to ask here, who do we feel better about than Tennessee right now? And I mean you are confident that they will be, yes, they are better than Tennessee in 2024. All right, don't have time for a cute joke. So let's just roll. You gave me the look like you had a cute joke.
No, I was going to say Georgia.
Okay, you're going to jump ahead? All right, let's start taking teams off. Who we don't feel confident about.
Auburn.
All right, Will, if you could yank Auburn. Instead of putting things on the board, we're taking them away. There we go. Auburn, gone. I agree. Anybody else?
Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Don't feel confident Texas A&M will be better than Tennessee. And Will, you can play along here because I know there's one on there that
Oklahoma by a country mile.
I knew where that was going. Does everybody agree?
Venables is bad at coaching football, and I think that's not great if you're if you're trying to be a football coach. Also, they new offensive coordinator. They're going to slow things down. We saw how that went in 2023 for teams that tried to do that. So I think that Oklahoma is going to end up being a problem.
All right, let's see what the panel thinks on that one. Do we agree?
Yeah, we'll find out in September since Tennessee goes to Norman, but looking at the list right now, Oklahoma would be my next selection. They have an offensive line concern, and Tennessee has a defensive line strength.
Their schedule is brutal.
And at best, I think they're even with Tennessee. I don't think they're better for sure.
All right, are we taking them off, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, they're gone. I would take Missouri off. I know people are saying, well, they've got a lot of people coming back. They won 11 games last year. Here's why I would take them off. They remind me of Tennessee a year ago. I think you're always going to have one of these teams in the SEC that pops up and has a heck of a year, and they take a little bit of a step back. That oh, no, they're here now. They've arrived. And it's like, no, they haven't. This league has a way of bringing you up and down. I could see Missouri winning 8 games this year. It'd still be a good program like Tennessee last year. 9-win program, nothing wrong with that. But I don't feel confident Missouri is going to be a ton better than Tennessee this year.
I
Am I
think
wrong?
their schedule's super easy, so if they don't win 9 games, they should really take a look at what's going on with them. But I agree with you. It just seems like Ole Miss 2 years ago, Tennessee this past season, that's 8-4 all day.
Anybody else up there that we don't feel confident is better than Tennessee? Should we take anybody else off, or do you think all those are definitely better than Tennessee this year?
I think
10,
I think
9.
LSU, there's a discussion there.
Yeah, the definite.
We don't have time for it. We got 5 seconds.
No.
No definites. All right, there you go.
Missouri needs to come off.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, then take Missouri off. Very good. Thank you. There's your list. Let's get one last shot of it. Nope, get one last shot of it. There we go. There's your list. We'll see you next Sunday. Right back here, the Lady Vols will probably hire a coach. Now you can come back to me. The Lady Vols will hire a coach, and we'll talk about all kinds of the orange and white game. Come on back. We'll see you then. Thank you.